Hello friends, welcome to the Soviet Journey channel. In this video I will tell you a little about animation and cartoon production in the Soviet Union. We have explained the history of television in the Soviet Union on our channel. I'm putting the link of that video in the upper right. You can watch it from there. Now I wanted to take a look at the cartoons and animations broadcast on Soviet television. These cartoons, which were prepared with high quality, especially for children, are still considered as a reference today. Let's take a tour of the history of Soviet cartoons and animation at this station on our Soviet journey. The Soviet Union began producing animation and cartoons very early and produced many notable cartoon series. Many animations and cartoons produced during the October Revolution were developed after the revolution and presented to the Soviet people. Animations, which were first published in 1906 during the Russian Empire, made a great breakthrough, especially during the Soviet period, and many generations of cartoons have been created until today. Soviet animations and cartoons, mostly released by Soyuz Multfilm and Studio Screen, were highly appreciated by the younger generation. Soviet animators became famous for their creativity all over the world, and Soviet cartoons and animations still cover a large area of research in film theory and cinema history today. The first Russian animator during the Tsarist period was Alexander Shiryayev, who produced stop-motion films at the Mariinsky Theatre, which made static three-dimensional objects appear to move. From 1906 to 1909, he rearranged ballet performances using puppets against a still landscape background and shot animations on 17.5mm film. The first film took 3 months to make. Shiryayev had little interest in animation as an art form. Instead, he preferred puppets made of plastic. Although this method was not used much during the Soviet period, these film fragments can still be accessed today. The second person to independently discover animation is Vladimir Starovich. As a trained biologist, Starovich began making animations using mummified insects for educational purposes, but later turned to the rising animation movement of the period, stop motion. His first few films, made in 1910, were black comedy about the lives of a cockroach family. These films had a revolutionary effect at the time, and even Tsar Nicholas II presented them with a decoration. Later, he shot several popular animated films with insects in the studio of Alexander Honzonkov, one of the founders of Russian cinema. He produced his films by combining stop motion with animation, such as the animated films The Night Before Christmas and A Terrible Revenge. Vladimir Starovich left Russia after the October Revolution, and for many years afterwards the animation industry failed to make progress. Following the establishment of the Soviet Union in the aftermath of the Civil War, animation production was revived in 1924 when Methrabpomfilm released the animated feature Interplanetary Revolution. You can access the animation in question, which is also on our channel, from the link on the top right. This animation used the constructivist art style along with the cutout animation method, or flat puppets as it was called at the time, and was developed independently by 3 artists. These artists were Nikolay Kadarev, Zenon Komisarenko and Yuri Merkulov. Merkulov also headed the first Soviet animation studio at the All-Union Institute of Cinematography. In 1925, with the support of the Soviet government, the same group, together with Ivan Ivanov-Vano, Vladimir Sutev and the Brumberg sisters, shot the animation China in Flames. With a running time of over 50 minutes at 1,000 meters per second of film and 14 frames per second, this film was the first Soviet animated film and one of the first in the world in this field. In the same period, animator Alexander Pushkin and director Sergey produced cartoons such as Soviet Toys, Humoresques, Kino Pravda. In these animations, the bourgeoisie, the church and Western countries were heavily criticized. In 1927, Merkulov, Ivanov-Vano and Daniel Cherkes released the cartoons African Senka and Skating Rink, which are considered the first Soviet cartoons aimed at children. Mikhail Tsarist's animation Mail in 1929 both returned to constructivist traditions and was successfully shown around the world, thus making Soviet animations make great progress and gained popularity. It also changed the perception of animation as an art form within the Soviet Union. The Mail animation was also one of the first films to be colorized. In 1933, Viktor Smirnov, who headed the New York-based Kino Corporation, which was responsible for the distribution of Soviet films in North America, was given the task of studying the animation processes at Disney and Fleischer Studios. The next year, he returned to Moscow and founded an experimental animation workshop. Here, together with Alexei Radikov, Vladimir Sutev, and Pyotr Nosov, he began to develop the Disney style. In 1935, Walt Disney sent film reels of his Three Little Pigs and Mickey Mouse animations to the Moscow Film Festival, which made a lasting impression on Soviet animators and officials. On June 10, 1936, the Soyuz Multfilm Studio produced short silent films from small films of Mosfilm, Savkino and Methrabpumfilm. 3-month training seminars were held in the studio, where animators received all kinds of training, from directing cartoon characters to the basics of music and acting. For 4 years, some of the leading animators focused on creating Disney-style short cartoons. From 1937 onwards, they began producing full-color cartoons using Pavel Mershin's 3-color film process. Towards the end of the 1930s, many producers developed their own styles and original cartoons began to be produced. With the start of the Great Patriotic War after the Nazi attempt to invade the Soviet Union, the studio moved to Samarkand with animators who continued to teach students and produce numerous films, including anti-fascist content. They returned to Moscow in 1943 as the Nazis repelled. Then, the children's films The Tale of Tsar Sultan, published in 1943 by the Brumberg sisters, 2 sisters who made great contributions to the Soviet cinema industry, and The Winter's Tale, the last Soviet film using 3 colors, published by Ivanov Vano in 1945, were released. 19 animators from Soyuz Multfilm crew killed during filming as war continues. A whole generation of Leningrad animators either disappeared on the fronts or lost their lives during the siege of Leningrad. On the other hand, many animators returned from the war disabled. Boris Dyothkin and Alexander Vinokurov lost an eye. Boris Batakov was hit in the head by a bullet and narrowly escaped death. Vladimir Degtyaryov lost his right arm. After the war, resources became extremely limited. The studio worked intensively to train animators after the war. 4 groups of students graduated between 1945 and 1948. They continued to release short cartoons and produced internationally popular films such as The Lost Letter, released in 1945, which Walt Disney used as a teaching tool for artists, and The Humpbacked Horse, released in 1947. From the mid-1960s onwards, many animators developed their own unique styles and approaches. The number of such distinctive animation styles rose to 50 per year during the 1980s. Anthologies of miniseries have become common. On the other hand, there was a dramatic decrease in feature-length cartoons. Director Boris Stepantsov became popular by experimenting with many styles in cartoons. Among Stepantsov's works, the postmodern comedy Vovka in the Faraway Kingdom from 1965, the paint-on-glass animation The Falcon Song from 1967, the electrographic Carlson on the Roof from 1970, and the wordless The Nutcracker from 1973 are among the popular cartoons of the period. Another respected director, Boris Dyothkin, launched a popular comedy cartoon series about 2 teams competing in various sports: football, hockey, skiing, boxing. This production ran from 1963 to 1981 and gained popularity when it was synchronized with music. Similarly, Roman Karshanov produced numerous cartoons for children. The puppet animations in the 1964 film A Little Frog is Looking for His Father, the 1967 film The Glove, and the Cheburashka series, which have become iconic characters of Soyuz multfilm from 1969 to the present, are still popular today. Similarly, The Bremen Town Musicians was released in 1969, an animated film heavily influenced by rock music and hippie culture that is still highly acclaimed today. Roman Davidov's miniseries The Adventures of Mowgli was shown on Soviet television from 1967 to 1971. Soviet animator Yuri Norshtin's cartoons Little Hedgehog in the Fog 1975 and Tale of Fairy Tales 1979 received numerous awards at international festivals. A Tale of Fairy Tales was named the best animated film of all time at the Olympic Arts Festival in Los Angeles in 1984 and at the Animefest Zagreb in 2002. In 1969, the most popular animated series in the history of the Soviet Union and Russia appeared. Well, just you wait. New Pogody. Directed by Vyacheslav Kodyonokin, the series tells the story of a wolf chasing a hare through Soviet-style cartoon worlds. In fact, this series has seemingly simple miniatures, but it has quality animations, comprehensive music, and subtexts cleverly placed in its episodes, and thanks to these contents, its popularity has continued to increase. The original series ran from 1969 to 1993. In the 2000s, there were repeated attempts to restart the series in Russia. Well, just you wait. Series is one of the best works in the history of cartoons. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the situation for Russian animators changed dramatically. Due to the new regime's policies of rejecting the Soviet past and the resulting inadequacy of state funding, all studios, starting with Soyuz multfilm, were privatized and almost all animators left these institutions, which turned into commercial enterprises. The animators joined the newly established pilot studio. Then, as Russia's new capitalist economy gradually stabilized, the animation market was established and a large number of feature-length animated films were released from Russian studios. Examples of these productions are Dwarf Nose in 2003 and Prince Vladimir in 2007. In the early 2000s, Russia passed laws reorganizing Soyuz multfilm and it was once again made a state-owned company. Despite these developments, Russia's animation community is still far from the glory it enjoyed before the collapse of the Soviet Union. In fact, according to the news in the press, it was announced that the Russian animation industry state company Paravoz, which was in a stalemate, entered a new era by signing contracts with Netflix. However, the animation and cartoon field in Russia still remains a huge gap that cannot be filled. Well, comrades, in this video, I wanted to take you on a journey through the history of cartoons and animation in the Soviet Union. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this little known information. I publish videos on lesser known Soviet topics like this on our Soviet Journey channel. Please don't forget to visit our channel to take a look at these videos and subscribe to our Soviet Journey channel to be informed about new videos. See you again in other similar videos. Goodbye for now. Stay in solidarity.